Okay, good morning to all of you. Today we're going to learn how to ask questions in English. Most of this will be a bit of revision of last year, so it won't be too hard, but it won't be too bad to hear all of this once more. So let's start with having two affirmative statements. Gewone stellingen, bevestigende zinnen. You have a big smile on your face and I am a very lucky man. Suppose you want to make questions of these and we need to do certain things. Let's take a look at the first way how to tackle this, and that's the easiest way. It's pretty much the same thing as what we do in Dutch. Supposed to say in Dutch, ik ben een zeer gelukkig mens. Then this becomes a question by just flipping the verb to be and the subject. Het werkwoord en het onderwerp verwisselen van plaats. Dat heet in het Nederlands inversie. In English, that's called inversion. And that's pretty much the same as how you do things in English most of the time. If you say, I am a very lucky man, everybody knows that you flip the verb to be and the subject, and then that becomes, are you a very lucky man, or am I a very lucky man, depending on whether you change the subject or not. So you swap the subject and the verb following it. Pretty simple. When do you do this? The first case in which to apply this rule is with the verb to be. If you have a sentence as in, I was very happy last year, you only have one verb, and that verb is a form of to be. It's was. Then if you want to turn it into a question, you just swap subject and verb, and you get, were you very happy last year, or was I very happy last year? Question mark. Pretty simple. So verb to be means inversion. This is what happened. We have our subject in first position turning into second position. Our was main verb flips over to the first position, and the rest of the sentence stays unchanged. The second case in which you follow this rule, the inversion, is when there is more than one verb in your sentence. If you, in other words, have an auxiliary and a main verb, een hulpwerkwoord and een hoofdwerkwoord. If you look at this sentence, my mother has made a cake for my birthday, then my mother, of course, is a subject, and has made are the verbs in this sentence, and we have here two verbs. This means that we can just use inversion. So how do we turn this into a question? You take the auxiliary verb, het hulpwerkwoord, and you change it to first position. You take your subject, you flip that to the second position, and then you take your main verbs or the rest of the verbs and you add them after your subject. The rest of the sentence remains unchanged. So it looks a bit like this. Subject, second position, your auxiliary verb, first position, and then the rest of the sentence. Pretty simple. The second method contains of inversion, dus opnieuw omkering, but this time you need to add an auxiliary. And you do this if you have a sentence with only one verb that is not to be as your main verb. Suppose you have the sentence, you laugh a lot. Everybody knows that you cannot say laugh I a lot. That's not English. I hope you feel that. What should we do now? Well, basically what we need to do is invent some sort of an auxiliary verb. And I think everybody knows that the auxiliary that you need here, you laugh a lot, and the auxiliary X right now. X, laugh a lot, needs to be changed with the form of to do. And that to do is in the same tense as your main verb in the original sentence. So here you have laugh, you laugh is simple present. So we need a form of to do, simple present, that goes along with you. So that's of course do, you laugh a lot. Easy as that, and it always works. Okay, suppose we want to start a question using a question word. So if I have this sentence here, I lived in France when I was younger, and you don't know it yet and you want to know where this person lived, then of course you need to do something else than we did in the previous examples. What you do then is, first of all, look at the sentence you've got. I lived in France when I was younger. I lived in France. There's only one verb there, lived. There's no auxiliary there. So that means that we will need a question with an auxiliary because it's not a form of to be and there's only one verb. So we know the auxiliary to do will have to stand here. In our first position, we have our question words because they always come in first position in English. Here we have a form of to do, and then we have our subject and our main verb, infinitive. You can see the D dropped here. And then we need to look at which form of the verb is lived. It's not simple present, it's simple past. So then we know that our form of to do should be the simple past, and that is, where did I live when I was younger? Pretty much all question words questions are formed in this way. So why, where, how, which, they all have this form of to do in the second position, unless of course there's another auxiliary. How can you be so lazy? Doesn't need a form of to do because can is our auxiliary here. Which book do you want me to take out of my backpack? So this system works with pretty much all question words. Okay, keep in mind three things, however. First of all, if you need the auxiliary to do, the verb following it becomes an infinitive. If you say she gave the book to John, then we know there's one verb here. It's not to be, so we need some sort of an auxiliary form of to do. This is simple past, so we need the simple past of to do. So the question here becomes, did she give the book to John? And if you want to know the information, if you want to ask who she gave the book to, then the sentence changes into something else. Let's look at that in a few moments. So here we have the simple past of to do because gave, of course, is simple past of give. This is the infinitive version, so you don't say who did she give the book to. That's wrong. Second thing to keep in mind is that prepositions shift positions if you question about the object. So she gave the book to John. Suppose you don't know who she gave the book to, then this changes into something. You don't say, did she give the book to who? That sounds a bit odd. If you say she sent the letter from London, then you don't ask, did she send the letter from where? Because if you have a question word, of course, your sentence starts with the question words, and your preposition shifts to the last position of the sentence. You don't say, to who did she give the book? Or did she give the book to who? You say, who did she give the book to? Because who, of course, is your question word, and your sentence always starts with a question word then. Your question always starts with a question word in English. She sent the letter from London. Where did she send the letter from? So the where is a question word, and the from becomes the last part of your sentence. Okay, the last thing to keep in mind is the difference between what and which. Suppose you start a sentence with what and which, there's a difference between the two, which you might not know. Most of the time, what is used when the choice you're given is open, and which is used when there is limited choice. Look at these two examples to make things clear. Which music do you like most, drum and bass or rock? Here you have two options, which means pretty limited choice. If I ask you what movie is your favorite of all time, you've got the choice of billions of movies, namely every single movie that has ever been made. So this means that you've got so much more options than in the first sentence, and then you use what, because the choice is open. Okay, that's pretty much everything there is to making questions, so normally you should be ready to rumble. There are some exercises in your book you can make right now. Exercise 56, 57, 58 and 59. They're fairly simple, I think, and it won't take long to finish them. The correction key will be online. Good luck.